Turkish Airlines presents Business Africa.
Greetings and a warm welcome to today's edition of Business Africa. I'm your host, Afolake Oyinloye. Here are this week's top stories. Ethiopia could gain Red Sea access through an agreement with Somaliland, a deal that may enable Ethiopia to diversify from its 95 lands on Djibouti. The West African CFA is gaining traction in Nigeria and Ghana, driven by stable convertibility. However, the shift is piling pressure on food export. We have expert insight on this and its other economic impact. After welcoming nearly 8 million international visitors in 2023, South Africa aims to surpass pre-COVID figures by March 2024. We take a look at its diverse African tourist influx plan. Ethiopia recently secured access to the Red Sea strategic coast by signing an agreement with Somaliland, leasing a 20-kilometer stretch of its coastline. With the Red Sea accounting for 15% of global maritime trade, this deal allows Ethiopia to diversify its sea access beyond Djibouti, where it currently relies on a single corridor for 95% of its imports and exports. The agreement prompts questions about its potential impact. Have a look.
Ethiopia, the world's most populous landlocked country, signed a significant agreement with Somaliland, marking a crucial step toward gaining sea access. The deal involves Somaliland leasing a 20-kilometer stretch of its coastline to Ethiopia for a marine force base, strengthening security, economic and political ties between the two nations. Ethiopia lost direct sea access in 1993, relying heavily on Djibouti's port since then. With a population exceeding 120 million, Ethiopia's need for diversified sea access is driven by its demographic size. The agreement hints at potential future recognition of Somaliland as an independent country by Ethiopia. Somalia, expressing swift disapproval, insists on involvement with the federal government of Somalia. Consequences of the agreement may impact regional dynamics, trade routes, and maritime commerce, challenging existing geopolitical realities and prompting reactions from neighboring countries and international organizations, some experts believe.
Ali Ojej, a legal and economic expert, joins us to elaborate on that topic. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. To start off with, what do you think would be the economic impact of this deal?
As far as I am concerned, there really is no deal. This is what was announced last Monday by the executives of Ethiopia and Somaliland in a memorandum of understanding. A memorandum of understanding which, in any case, for the lawyer that I am, is an instrument that we will call in French soft law. MOU. In other words, basically it's like a first step in the deepening of bilateral relations between Ethiopia and Somaliland. We should start by recalling the reality of Ethiopia's demographic power. It is already the most densely populated landlocked country in the world, well ahead of Afghanistan or Niger. So the first message is that Ethiopia does not want to, and cannot give up having access to the sea other than the one it currently depends on, that's the port of Djibouti. It is obliged to multiply its areas of access to the sea so as not to leave its colossal population dependent on the Djibouti corridor alone. These realities help to put into perspective the political act which took place on January 1st, which is moreover the day on which Ethiopia officially joined the BRICS club. So there is a signal being sent out in a particular electoral year, 2024, in which we will see a very, very large number of elections.
Dans une année électorale particulière, 2024, qui va donc connaître un nombre d'élections très, très important.
Now, if there were a deal, would this affect trade between countries in the sub-region?
Today, maritime trade is already significantly affected by a regional political reality, and this has concrete consequences, because higher freight costs mean higher inflation, and for the end user, that means more expensive goods. So maritime trade is already being affected. You also have, as you know, these geopolitical realities with Al-Shabaab on one side, the Houthis on the other side, the American intervention force, which has already been formed with countries which have decided to join it and whose aim is to be able to provide security in the area. So, if you like, alongside this, Somalia is reacting in a completely predictable and expected way. It takes a dim view of the idea that Somaliland could finally move towards the beginning of international recognition. And so in this geopolitical configuration, with the conflict you already have in the Middle East, it is in nobody's interest for the region to become even more destabilized.
So in your opinion, Somalia's appeal to the international community might have no effect?
Its organizations, such as the African Union and so on, they're perfectly in their role, and their role is to push each state of the African Union. I would remind you that the headquarters of the African Union are also in Addis Ababa. But to remind these states to respect the defined and known borders is the role of the African Union. But the fundamental trends that are taking place in the region are driven by economic and geopolitical agendas. As you know, the father of the Ivorian state, Félix Houphouët-Boigny, said that a road precedes development. So we can't imagine creating prosperity in developing countries without putting in place transport infrastructure, that is to say roads and ports. And so it is in Ethiopia's vital interest to be able to multiply these access zones and facilitate its future exports, agriculture, agricultural processing, and so on.
Mr. Ojesh, thanks so much for your time. Bye for now.
Bye.
Despite Nigeria and Ghana constituting approximately 60% of the economic community of West African states' GDP, these Anglophone nations are strapping to the currency attributed to the ease of conversion and the relative stability of its value. Here's more to how the controversial franc CFA is gaining popularity in Nigeria and Ghana.
The West African CFA francs, also known as the CFA, is currently emerging as one of the most sought-after currencies in Nigeria and Ghana, while many in the Francophone West African region view it as a symbol of French economic dominance. Its stable convertibility has captured the interest of economic players in both countries. In Nigeria, the demand for the CFA is even more pronounced due to the limited availability of naira liquidity and the depreciation of the local currency. In Lagos, the CFA has nearly doubled in exchange value to the naira.
Food inflation is rising so fast because the farmers prefer to sell their food to neighboring West African countries, and they earn CFA, which by the time they convert to naira gives them far more value. So all of a sudden, Nigeria is losing food. And the economic principle, once your currency, countries devalue their currency because they want their exports to be cheaper. Unfortunately, ours is food. Our food is getting cheaper, and the Francophone West African countries is where most of this food is going to, and then they export it. So it's creating a huge impact on the country, and it's happening both to Ghana and Nigeria.
Despite Nigeria and Ghana representing a combined potential market of nearly 250 million people, constituting approximately 60% of the ECOWAS population, the growing significance of the CFA in these countries does not signify a reversal of regional economic forces. Experts say it rather reflects the impact of external factors on all these economies. Yet the combined contributions of Nigeria and Ghana would still make up 61% of the GDP of both ECOWAS, according to official figures.
In 2023, South Africa celebrated a tourism resurgence, hosting nearly 8 million international visitors. With sights set on surpassing pre-COVID figures by March 2024, the nation's success hinges on the diverse influx of African tourists, top-source countries, and a symbiotic relationship between wildlife conservation and economic growth. We'll take a look.
South Africa received nearly 8 million international tourists in 2023, marking a 51.8% increase compared to January to November 2022. The nation aims to surpass pre-COVID figures, targeting over 10 million arrivals by March 2024. African tourists, particularly from Zimbabwe, Mozambique and Lesotho, played a significant role, with a 53.4% growth compared to 2022. Among the top 10 international tourism source countries, the United Kingdom leads the ranking, while SADC countries have contributed significantly to tourist arrivals. South Africa's tourism landscape is driven by diverse factors and a keen focus on wildlife-based experiences.
What wildlife-based tourism does is it provides economic opportunity off the back of the country's wildlife asset. So at the same time as earning money from one's wildlife, one is also safeguarding one's ecological prosperity and the ability of the economy to function because of the ecological integrity that is being maintained in the process.
Experts say other facets of wildlife economy offer potential growth avenues in South Africa. They include carbon markets, the export of carbon credits, hunting, ranching, non-timber forest products, and more.
And that's a wrap on this week's edition of Business Africa. Thanks for joining us. For more captivating business stories and news, stay tuned to Africanews and Africanews.com.
Business Africa was presented by Turkish Airlines.